Hello and welcome to Movie Recommendation Mondays. Today we're going to be looking at a movie that I've only just seen in the cinema, and that movie is The True History of the Kelly Gang. The True History of the Kelly Gang is a biographical western about the life of Australian outlaw Ned Kelly, and is directed by Justin Kurzel, best known for 2015's Macbeth and also that shitty Assassin's Creed movie. So as a Brit, I was completely unaware of Ned Kelly before going into this film. I'd never really heard of him. But since having seen it and spoken to my dad, who spent much of his childhood in Australia, and done some research, it basically seems like he's one of those historical figures that if you're an Australian, it's basically impossible to grow up and not have heard of him. For those of you who are as ignorant as I was before going to see this film, Ned Kelly was an Australian outlaw or bushraider who was extremely notorious for a series of police killings. The thing that's most well known about him is this gunfight that he had, his infamous last stand against the police, where he was wearing this homemade armour with this huge bucket head on. The story of Ned Kelly really captured the imagination of people, particularly in Australia. In fact, what is often considered the first ever feature film, dating all the way back to 1906, was the story of Ned Kelly. As such, Ned Kelly falls into the category of historical figures whose stories are a mixture of history and myth. Think Robin Hood, but without the giving to the poor bit. This isn't another retelling of history, and as much is made clear by the opening text, which reads, "Nothing you are about to see is true." Instead, it's a deconstruction of the man and the myth that modern Australians grow up with. The film is separated into three chunks, the first focusing on his childhood, the second on his return home as a man, then the third on his life as an outlaw, and his descent into delusion and insanity. The first thing to say about this film is that it looks fantastic. The locations, particularly the external ones, look incredible. This, combined with some fantastic cinematography, makes the Australian bush in this film feel almost like another character. We also have a host of career best performances. George McKay was sublime and is an actor who I believe is destined for great things. He gives a remarkably physical performance. His body is so lean and sinewy, it really is something to behold. Other standout performances include Nicholas Hoult and Essie Davis, who both give what I would consider, in my opinion, to be their career best performances. There are two key themes in this film, the first being legacy. Kelly is obsessed with the idea of his story. Throughout his, albeit short, adult life, we see him frantically writing down his thoughts, which serves as narration for the audience. This idea is also explored through several other characters, including Harry Power, played by Russell Crowe. Legacy and the idea of what we leave behind after us is an idea that's present throughout the entire film, all the way up until the very final shot, and is particularly relevant for Ned Kelly, whose story has been told over and over again to the point where it's no longer clear which parts are fiction and which parts are myth. The second key theme is fragile and toxic masculinity. Throughout his childhood, Kelly is told time and time again to be a man and that he's the man of the house. Whilst this appears a very black and white during the first part of the story, the lines become more and more blurred as Kelly gets older. The police colonel, played by Nicholas Hoult, is strangely seductive, a far cry from the ultra-macho man that was his predecessor, played by Charlie Hunnam. The gang even take to wearing dresses as they fight in the final third of the movie, the lines between masculinity and femininity being very much blurred.
So is this a perfect movie?
No. My biggest issue with it is there's some continuity errors in the middle. There's a scene where two of the characters are sitting next to each other on like a sofa, and they're just having a conversation, but between the shots, the angles that the character's facing change, so it'll be facing this way, and then the shot will change angle and he'll be facing this way. It's not really a big deal, but it's something that you kind of get quite a lot in TV, but for a movie like this, it just feels like a little bit amateur. The other issue I had is more of an artistic choice that they went for, which I wasn't entirely on board with. So there are parts of the movie which are quite abstract, when the characters, I guess, they're having trouble in their own head, and that's represented on screen by this white flashing strobe light. I can see why they did it, but for me,
I just found it incredibly distracting. It completely took me out of the film. I was like going, oh. It really wasn't very pleasant to look at. Some people might completely disagree with me and love it. I imagine there's a lot of people that would actually really hate this. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't crazy about it. But other than that, I don't want to go too down on this thing. I think it's a fantastic movie, and I think it's been completely slept on. At time of recording this video, on IMDb, it's got just over 2,000 ratings, which is incredibly low, especially for a movie that as good as this. So this movie actually came out in 2019, technically, and so it's on my 2019 list. It's definitely my top 10. I think around 8th, I think is where I settled on putting it. I'll show you the rest of my top 10 now for reference. But yeah, definitely check this one out if you can. It's still in the cinema in a lot of places, so you can. But yeah, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.